What's up, everybody? Welcome back to SkillSharp The Podcast and to another edition of the Professional Pivot. Whether you're feeling stuck in your current role, burned out on your industry, or simply craving something new, this episode is for you. We'll break down what a career pivot really looks like and share stories from those who successfully made the leap. I'm Todd Nakasone, along with my colleague Brian Wright. Our special guest today, Wade Smart, founder and president of Smart Partners Consulting, LLC. Wade is a great example of an entrepreneur that is currently carving his own path. Wade, welcome to Skillsharp.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Appreciate you having me on your podcast. Good to be here.
Yeah, Wade and I used to work together in entertainment recruiting. Along, Brian, and we all know each other, so very familiar with your journey. But if you wouldn't mind, can you share with the audience, your background and how you came to where you are now?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I started in recruiting by way of being a former tech myself. Started out on a help desk like a lot of techs do, became a systems admin, and along the way, I started to be recruited as a technology recruiter. And I kept saying no for a little while, and eventually I said yes. And started doing the recruitment thing, and I found out my true passion was helping people, giving back. And that gave me an opportunity to do it. So I did that for a couple years, and then a client came calling and asked me to come in and work with them. And that was interesting because that took me back to the business side. I got out of agency recruiting. I went back as a technology trainer and then a technology marketing manager doing web content management, that sort of thing. And then a buddy of mine called me up one day after about 5 years and said, "Hey, you ever thought about getting back to recruiting?" And he's a friend of the podcast. I'm gonna give him a plug, Mike Daniels,
Oh,
MD.
yeah.
So I said sure, and I got a chance to work with Big Mike one more time, and that was at 20th Century Fox. That was in 2007, and I never looked back. I've been in-house ever since. What led me to my current state today was just changing markets. We go through those changes frequently. And the last change, which we'll get into more detail, I pivoted into my current role and started my own executive search agency. And so it's been 2+ years now since I started the agency, and it's been great 2 years so far.
We're all veterans of Fox, I understand.
Absolutely.
The way that you described your leaps is kind of like jumping across a river where you're hitting these big rocks and making these huge leaps to get across. Man, these are really um, notable steps that you've taken in your development. What's been the mindset that has allowed you to be so adaptable to these new options and opportunities that arise?
Yeah, no, a great question. And, as you described that, I can't help but think about the game Frogger. For those of you who've been around for a little while, it's a lot like Frogger. And so a long time ago, I kind of came to the conclusion, and I came to this conclusion on my own, is one, be adaptable, be a chameleon. And for a long time, that was a phrase that I've always used in my professional career, being able to adapt to certain circumstances and being able to pivot on the dime. And so if an opportunity presented itself, and it was a good opportunity once I assessed it, I was not afraid to take that leap. And so I've always set myself up to be, I guess you would call it a pillar in my community, right? I chose to live in the city that I live in. I chose each job fairly carefully. It was all part of branding before I even knew what branding was. I felt like I needed to make certain that I had opportunities ahead of me based on my history. And so, what I mean by that is, if you look back through my profile, through my history, there's no question that I can do just about any particular recruiting function for any industry, based on what I've done. And so I've never been afraid to take that leap. And so, when I had the opportunity to leave a full-time job for a consulting gig, which I did. I did it with the full understanding that I'll probably never go back to that full-time job. I'll find another one, right? I wasn't scared to take that leap. And then when they offered me a full-time job after that consulting, I said thank you, but no thank you. And then I took the leap again and became, a recruiter. And so when I did that, that was agency recruiting. And I knew, based on that trajectory and I bet on myself that if this wasn't something I wanted to do, I would pivot again. And so betting on yourself is something that I've always done, but I've always said, make certain that you always have options. We talk about career advice and some of those things. And so when I give people advice, I said, always make sure you have options. That way you can't be pigeonholed or backed into a corner. And so I followed that advice early in my career, and it served me well through this point.
And how much has market conditions these days with the job market the way it is, shaped your new business or your new outlook on business?
Yeah, no, it's no doubt played a big role in my decision because, a lot of recruiters, colleagues, yourselves included, people that we know have been affected by this current market. And this is not the first time, right? We had the big market shift in 2008 when we had the writer's strike and the guild strike and what else was the picket lines. So we had just market conditions, right? I call it the perfect storm. That happened in 2008. So we rode through that. And then, then we had COVID and we rode through that. And now here we are, 2023 came around, market shift. A lot of recruiters lost their jobs. We all spent a few months trying to land a new job. And after about 6 months, I decided, you know what, I'm going to hire myself because I'm not going to do this again for another 6 months. And my wife, who's, a big part of my inspiration, she is a serial entrepreneur. She's never worked for anybody before. She's always been either an independent contractor or self-employed. And so that's just how she was raised. Her parents were entrepreneurs. That's what she saw. And back in the day, if I go back, probably post Fox, but somewhere between Fox and I don't know UTA, United Talent Agency, she'd been encouraging me to start my own business because so many people would come to me for recruiting advice, resume advice, advice, those types of things. And I decided in 23 to finally listen and said, okay, now it's time. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I would look around and see other people running their own business, and I've always said, why not me? And that goes back to college. Why not me? If they can do it, why not me? And so I wasn't scared. I just pivoted and I jumped right in, find out what I needed to do, and took those steps, to make that happen. And here I am, full-fledged, executive search. Can work with anybody that's willing to work with me and reciprocate. Uh-oh, we think we lost you for a sec.
Sorry. Yeah, I think in our last episode, we talked about being able to take calculated risks.
Mhm.
And how were you able to analyze the market and where did you see your place in the market going forward, but also mitigating risk?
Sure, sure. No, that's a great question. And I'll say, so as I analyze the market, a job would go up, a great job would go up. You'd see a posting, and you check it in the morning and you come back the next day and you'd see, 500 applicants on that role. Or you go to LinkedIn or any other website and you see another, 500 recruiters at XYZ company were just laid off, or 7,000, recruiters were just laid off over the course of the day. And so they're flooding the market. And so when you see a flood in the market, what that does to labor is it cheapens the labor. And then you start to see the job salaries on those postings become less and less. I don't know what universe a director is going to make $100,000 with years of experience, but that's what you started to see in the marketplace. And so at that point, I just said, okay, that's not going to work. And so, through the application process, I felt like, okay, what's the risk? What's the worst that could happen? I could continue to look for a job and still be in the same situation 6 months from now, or I can go to work. I can use the tools that I've gained over the years working with great people like yourselves and other great team members and other connections that I've made over the years and start my own business. And so, I'm fortunate enough. I have a lot of friends who are business owners, in my community, people that, my son goes to school with and their parents. And so again, I go back to why not me? If they can do it, why not me? And so it's about picking your lane, and deciding, okay, what is it that you want to do? What are you good at? Well, I'm good with people and I'm great with resumes and connecting with people because I've always been a relationship guy, not transactional. And so I said, I'll use that to pivot and, start my own agency. And so for me, there was no risk involved, because it wasn't like it was 2021, 2022 when we're coming out of COVID and everybody was hiring and all these salaries. That would have been a risk to say, okay, instead of, doing that, foregoing that salary and then starting my own business, there was no risk because there was no salary, to forego. There were a lot of people I'm talking to today that are still looking. So for me, it was just a matter of why not go for it.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm going to give both of you credit in your lanes is that, technical recruiting and also finance recruiting, in my perspective, tend to be, with more of a transactional mindset. I mean, you're dealing with people that are project based and, obviously technical, that know deals, know finances, know that side of the business. So it'd be kind of challenging to be a great relationship person in those two areas, but both of you are, okay? And then the other part of it is giving advice and coaching people. A lot of HR people just do that second nature, right? And obviously for free.
Right.
So, I mean, not to put you on the spot, Todd, but it's almost a question for both of you. But Wade, think about this. Like, how did you get your mind around your relationship ability can be monetized? The thing that you've been given for free is career advice, coaching advice can be monetized. I think that is the toughest leap for a lot of people that have been employees, jump into the entrepreneur mindset. So it's a
Mhm.
long lead up, but how did you think about your skill set and how did you get yourself to feel comfortable monetizing your expertise?
Sure, sure. I'll address the first part of that, about the relationship side of the business when you're dealing with, IT project managers or engineers or something like that. So what I find is that my experience, having worked on the business side, when you're talking to techies, they respect that. Right. When I tell them that I did web content management or I was a technology trainer, I'm a certified project manager, they can relate to those things. And so now the conversation becomes one, oh, well, you get this. And then they can talk tech while I'm capturing, the conversation. And then we go back and forth. And so for that, it's been able to be one of those things where it's very fluid, those conversations. And when I was on the agency side doing business development and doing the recruitment side, I never approached a call as a cold call. Right. I always told myself this has got to be a warm call. This has got to be a warm lead. That's always been my approach. And so I find something common. I find a commonality between myself and whoever it is I'm about to outreach. And so I try to find as much as I can, about the individual that I'm reaching out to. And then when we talk, I try to make a connection, each and every time. And that connection could be sports related. It could be the town they live in. It could be the school they went to. You saw something or they mentioned something about their kid and, oh, how old is your kid? And so you connect on a personal level as well as professional level. And then what you find is that those people become colleagues. They stay in touch with you years later, right? Because they know that connection. And so that part has been pretty good for me in terms of making those connections. And as I've gone through my career, I've become more than just a technical recruiter because I've worn so many hats and built out so many teams across different business verticals, at Mattel, at NBC Universal. I've always had IT because I'm an IT recruiter, but I've had so many other things in addition to that. And, we go back to my time at Fandom where I was a head of talent acquisition. Everything flowed through me, sales, marketing, started an internship program for early career folks, coming into the business. And so, that's creative as well. And so anyway, so I'll say that, about the relationship piece. And it's funny, the second part of that question is, how do you monetize the stuff that you've been giving away for free for so long? I felt the same way. I'd often ask my wife, I said, well, people are asking because they need a job. And how do you monetize that? And I said, I just do it. So now, what I tell people is like, It's more of, hey, this is now my business, and I understand that you need a job and I want to help you get a job. Sometimes the recruitment of trying to place them at a company turns into, hey, there's other ways I can help you, and this is how it looks. And so it goes beyond the career coaching. Smart Partners Consulting LLC, that's my business, right? That's my executive search. But I have a couple different lanes. And then one of those business lanes is what I call reverse recruiting, right? And so reverse recruiting is that same model that you might see when someone says, hey, I'm going to give you some career counseling, and help you get there, right? And we all know what that looks like. That's a resume review and maybe a resume rewrite. Maybe they help you create some cover letters. They give you some interview tips, and they tell you to go network, right? And then you give them whatever you're paying them, 5 grand, 15 grand, whatever that looks like. I think maybe we've all seen it before, and they wish you good luck. And you walk out of that thinking I've got a great looking resume, and then 3 months later you're still looking for a job, right? So I take it one step further. Everything I do, I try to supersize it. And so one of those ways that I do it is I take that same model, but I put something on the end. So if I say to you, Brian, hey, let's do this. I'm going to give you all this. I'm going to give you an executive summary as well. And all I need is a little bit of your time so we can go through your resume. And then from the information you give me and the highlights, we're going to take that and create this great executive summary. That executive summary is now going to go to my graphic designer. That graphic designer is going to make it look nice and pretty, right? I'm going to give you 5 to choose from. You choose the one that best suits you, right? And then we put it through with artificial intelligence. It's out there. We know it's out there. So let's use it to our advantage. Let's make sure that doing that supersize, that's part of it, right? But it's still your information. So it's not fabricated. We're just asking AI to make it look pretty, capture all the key points. We take those key points, those victories, those things that you're most proud of, that you accomplished at these jobs, and that's now your one pager, your executive summary. So now what do we do with that information? Now I'm going to take those assets that you gave me, and I'm going to get you some interviews. You're going to give me interviews? Yeah, yes, I'm going to get you some interviews. That's right. I'm going to get you interviews. You're not going to have to do anything because you've done everything up front. So now all I need from you is your network. What do I mean by that? You give me access to your network, your LinkedIn network. How many people do you have in your LinkedIn network? I need you to download that. And then guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to download mine and I'm going to stick mine in your file too. And then I'm going to have my guys start applying the jobs based on all the information that you gave me. So you give me all the information, the jobs that you're willing to take by title, what your mobility status is, if you're willing to go to work on a hybrid schedule, or you want to go into an office now because you're tired of being at home all day by yourself, or you say, hey, listen, I'm willing to relocate. And then we take all that information, even all the cultural stuff that applications ask. So we ask, the same information. How do you identify? And then we're going to tell you to say no to those things if you have the option. But if you have to answer them, then at least we capture that information. And now I'm going to apply to jobs for you. And I'm going to probably apply to about 75 to 80 jobs per week for you. So when you come to me at the beginning and I ask you how many jobs you've applied to since you've been out of work, and you've been out of work for 6 months, and you tell me, oh, I've applied to about 150 jobs in 6 months, and I said, well, how many interviews did you get? And he's like, I got 2 interviews, and then they both ghosted me. So it's not really working for you, right? So if I tell you that I can apply to 150 jobs in a matter of a month and then some, and then I guarantee that you'll get 4 interviews out of that because we've done everything to supersize your resume. We've done everything. We've created this great executive summary. And now we're going to tap into your network. So if I apply to 200 jobs for you, and let's say, I don't know, 15, 12%, right? Respond to that. That's probably, I don't know, I said 200 and I said about 12. It's like 25 people that we can reach out to that we know between you and me that will say, yeah, I'll get your resume into the right hands. And we all know what referrals happen, right? When you're a recruiter and you get a referral, that referral goes to the top of the line. Recruiters are going to look at that, right? So now you're not just one of 1,000 people applying for that job. You're going to get to the front of the line along with the internals that are also getting consideration. And so now what we're going to do is I have some templates. Here's a template. You can use this template. Just go ahead and change some things, make sure you personalize it, and you send it to your referral. And you ask them to get it to the hands of the recruiter or the hiring manager. And if I know someone that's there, I'm going to pick up the phone and call them, or I'm going to shoot them an email and say, hey, I'm working with Todd, and Todd is a great guy, and he's interested in your director of XYZ. I'd appreciate, can you just take a look at him? I'm like, sure, Wade, absolutely. I'll get him in, or here's the link, have him use this referral link. And if I do that for 25 people and 12 of them say yes, and let's say 12 of them say yes, and six of them get you an interview, you just got six interviews that you didn't get on your own. And so that's what we promise here at Smart Partners Consulting. And we get you at bats, and that's all we need. We know people need at bats. And if you can't get them on your own, that's like trying to be a baseball player and going out to the field to yourself. You can't pitch and hit at the same time, right? You can't pitch to yourself. Sometimes you need someone to throw you some pitches. That's what we do. We go out there and we do all the legwork for you. So all you have to do now is just be ready for the interview. And then if I just keep going with it, I mean, there's still more to it, right? But that is consensus of what Smart Partners Consulting does. We do the reverse recruiting, we do the executive recruiting, we give people opportunities, and we know that, you get beat up, you get no's, now you just need some yeses.
I think the power of that too, Wade, is the fact that they get access to your extensive network on LinkedIn.
Mm.
And that's something that you can never, ever replicate if you're doing it on your own.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. I put it to use every day. I did that today, for a client that I'm working with. And my guys are so good on the back end. We send out the emails. I'm copied on all those emails. And so when we get a hit, we get a response from a from a company, right, that wants to interview my client. Company's not paying me anything. So I need to make the money. I make the money off the client, right? And so the client now has an interview that they never would have gotten otherwise. And if I know someone like I did today, boom, I just send a quick note and just say, hey, I'm working with Brian. Brian's a really good guy. I've known him for years. He's really smart. He's interested in your, whatever. Can you please have a look at his information? And guess what I'm sending them? I'm sending them that one pager, that the one that's going to whet their appetite, the one that has all the victories, the things that you're most proud of over the last 10 years, the last three jobs that you had. Now they want to hear more. And like, oh yeah, we got his resume. I'm going to take a look at it right now. That's the kind of feedback I get, and then they get the interview.
It's incredible business development as well,
Mhm.
because as you said, your brand, now these people know that you're working with clients, candidate talent as far as clients, and they may say, we also have this other position.
Mhm.
Or, wow, we've been working with these people internally, because I know you also work with companies on like kind of their leadership searches, but also their succession plans and
Sure,
things like
sure.
that. So no, what you're describing is a really 360 kind of engagement
Mhm.
on not just the company as a client, but obviously the talent as clients, and it all is symbiotic. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally, flipping the recruitment, cycle on its head. It's flipping it upside down because, you're getting someone who hasn't gotten an interview on their own, or, very few interviews. Like I said, some at bats. But at the same time, if I place a director, VP, C-suite, at a company, when they need to hire, I become hopefully their agency of choice, because now they need some managers, they need some directors to come in, they need this, and they know that I know the business. And so I can help in that regard as well. So hopefully that person, that client now becomes a customer as well. And so those are models that I'm looking at. And sometimes, a simple recruitment turns into a client, right? So I'm trying to get someone a job at XYZ company because the company is paying me for that service. Whatever reason that client does not get the job, or they don't have the bandwidth to continue to apply for jobs, and they say, well, can you tell me a little bit more about your reverse recruiting? Because at that point, I let them know. I said, hey, I'm sorry. I'll keep looking for you. I'll keep an eye out if there's another, I don't know, sysadmin role that comes available. But, I had this other thing, and I can get you some more at bats if that's what you're interested in. I can get you some more interviews. Well, tell me a little bit more about it. And then I start talking to them about that process. And next thing you know, they want it, right? They want to spend the money. And, I've got a price sheet, and I've got packages, and I've got a la cartes. And so we make certain that it's affordable, for the job seeker.
The other thing too that I think that candidates don't really see is that they're getting access to the hidden job market,
Mhm.
not just sharing their resume because there's a LinkedIn post, but may not even be a position that's ready. Like you said, Brian, the succession planning of it all.
Sure. Yeah.
They're not going to post those positions.
Yeah, I got a perfect example for you. I've got a person that was 29 years with this company, chief marketing officer, got laid off, after 29 years. He's still a young man, still a young man. And so he's still got work to do. And so he's interviewing at that level and interviewed for, I want to say maybe a senior director level role. So he gave us a bandwidth of, VP, SVP. And if the right opportunity came, he would consider a senior director, depending on the money. And so he interviewed, and what came out of that was, hey, we've got a CEO level role that's coming available, because now what you have is, you've got secret market, right? We know that not all roles are equal and not every role gets posted. And so when you start making those contacts and you've got the executive summary and you've got this great looking resume that presents, it elevates everyone, right? So maybe you've been working at the senior manager level and then you come through our process and then we put your resume together, and we're not fabricating anything. Let me be clear. We're supersizing it based on the stuff that maybe you left out, right? We're digging into it. What are you most accomplished at this job? What are you most proud of that you accomplished at this job? And it wasn't there before. And now we go back and then we quantify some of those numbers, and now you're like, wow, I didn't realize I did all that, you know? And so when you go to the job market, now you're looking at director. Now you're looking at senior director, and you should get that role. You should get that interview at the very least. And so we offer coaching as well. We do mock interviews. We get you ready. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. And always remember to stay sharp.